She froze in her tracks. The bustling park around her seemed to blur, sounds fading into silence as her eyes locked onto the boy sitting alone on the bench. His skin was darker, his clothes torn and worn, but his face was the exact image of someone she thought she'd never see again. The millionaire's girlfriend clutched her chest, her breath catching in disbelief. It can't be, she thought. For in the hollow eyes of a black homeless boy, she saw the ghost of their dead son staring back. But who was he? And why was he there? The millionaire had built an empire on discipline, ambition, and control. To the world, he was untouchable. His wealth, his mansion, his reputation. Yet behind the walls of luxury, silence hung heavy. Years ago, tragedy had struck when their only child, a bright young boy, was taken from them in a cruel twist of fate. Since then, every dinner felt emptier, every holiday colder. No amount of money could fill the void that grief had carved into their lives. His girlfriend carried that weight even more deeply. She was not the boy's mother, yet she had loved him as her own. His laughter still echoed in her mind, haunting her whenever she passed playgrounds or heard the innocent chatter of children. She had urged the millionaire to find healing, to travel, to breathe again. But nothing seemed to work. On that particular morning, they had chosen the park for a walk. The trees swayed gently in the spring breeze, families gathered on picnic blankets, and children played freely, their voices, carrying the kind of joy the couple thought they had lost forever. The millionaire tried to keep his gaze forward, pretending peace was possible. His girlfriend, however, found herself watching the children, her heart aching at every familiar gesture. She had come here searching for a fragment of normalcy, a reminder that life still carried on. What she didn't know was that within the ordinary stillness of that park, her past would come rushing back in a form she could never have imagined, forcing her to confront grief, prejudice, and a boy who seemed to carry her son's very face. As they strolled deeper into the park, her eyes caught sight of someone who didn't belong to the scene of laughter and play. Sitting hunched on a weathered bench was a boy no older than 12. His clothes hung loosely, torn and soiled, his shoes barely clinging to his feet. People passed him quickly, their glances sharp but fleeting, an unspoken agreement to look away, to pretend he wasn't there. But she couldn't look away. Something in his posture, in the tilt of his head, tugged at her chest. She slowed her steps, her gaze fixed. The millionaire noticed her sudden stillness and followed her eyes. He frowned. "Just another homeless kid," he muttered under his breath, urging her to keep walking. But his words dissolved as soon as she whispered, barely audible, trembling, "He looks like your son." The millionaire's heart stuttered. For a moment, anger rose, anger at her for saying something so impossible, so cruel. But when he looked again, truly looked, he felt the ground shift beneath him. The boy's eyes, deep and weary, mirrored the same piercing gaze of a child he had buried years ago. She took a step forward, her breath shallow. Memories rushed through her. Birthdays with candles glowing, little shoes running across marble floors, the echo of laughter through wide, empty halls. The resemblance was undeniable, yet it was impossible. She knew it. Still, her soul refused to release the connection. Around them, whispers floated from strangers. Some frowned at her focus on the boy. Others shook their heads in disapproval. To them, he was just another black homeless kid, dirty, unwanted, invisible. No one saw what she saw. No one cared that he was a child before anything else. The millionaire tugged at her arm, whispering sharply, "Don't! Leave it alone! It's not him!" But she resisted, her eyes never leaving the boy. She saw beyond his ragged exterior, the thin frame, the sunken cheeks, the quiet stillness in his expression. It was as if grief itself had taken shape and sat before her. The boy shifted, glancing up. For the first time, their eyes met, and in that instant, time fractured. She swore it was her son staring back, pleading, reaching across the gap between the living and the dead. Her knees weakened, but she held steady, tears brimming. The millionaire, however, turned cold. He had spent years burying pain beneath walls of wealth, determined never to feel that wound again. To open it now, to acknowledge it, was unbearable. To him, approaching that boy meant reopening a grave that had never truly closed. But for her, it was different. She felt that this encounter was not an accident. Something greater was at play. Maybe fate, maybe divine will, maybe simply life's cruel way of forcing them to face what they had ignored. She knew she couldn't just walk away. Her heart raced as she stepped closer. Each footfall seemed heavier, as though she were walking through memories instead of grass. The world around her faded, replaced by the haunting echo of the child she had once loved. And now, standing before her in the skin of a homeless boy, the past demanded to be seen. She moved closer, her hands trembling, each step a war between reason and heart. The millionaire's grip on her wrist tightened, but she shook him off. She had to see the boy, had to know why his face carried the weight of her son's memory. When she finally stood before him, the boy lifted his head, his eyes met hers, tired, hungry, yet piercing with a strange familiarity. For a moment she forgot to breathe. The resemblance was unbearable. The curve of his jaw, the arch of his brow, even the way he tilted his head, it was like looking at a ghost wearing different skin. Tears spilled down her cheeks. She wanted to reach out, to cradle him, to whisper his name, but her voice broke before it could escape. Behind her, the millionaire's chest rose and fell rapidly. His face hardened, not with indifference, but with fear. He could see it too, the haunting resemblance. And for a man who had spent years running from grief, this was torture. The boy looked at her curiously, confused by her tears. He didn't understand the storm raging inside her heart. To him, she was just another stranger staring too long. Yet in his silence, in his quiet stillness, she saw everything she had lost: innocence, love, family. Finally, the millionaire stepped forward, his jaw clenched. His eyes, too, were wet, though he tried to hide it. For the first time in years, the pain cracked his armor. He saw not just a boy, but a mirror reflecting everything he had ignored: the fragility of life, the cruelty of loss, the injustice of a child abandoned to the streets. And in that raw, unbearable moment, neither of them could pretend any longer. The girlfriend wiped her tears and slowly knelt in front of the boy. She reached into her bag, pulling out a small packet of food she had brought for the walk. She offered it gently, her voice trembling as she whispered, "Here. This is for you." The boy hesitated at first, glancing around as though waiting for someone to shoo him away. But when he saw the kindness in her eyes, he reached out cautiously and accepted it. His hands were thin, fragile, almost skeletal. He ate quickly, not out of greed, but from the simple truth of hunger. The millionaire stood frozen, watching. Inside, two voices battled, one urging him to walk away, to protect the fragile walls he had built around his grief, and the other whispering that this moment was not about him at all. It was about the boy. Finally, his shoulders dropped. With a heavy sigh, he stepped closer, pulling his wallet from his pocket. But his girlfriend shook her head. "Not just money," she said softly. "He needs more than that." For the first time in years, the millionaire looked at someone with unguarded eyes. He knelt beside her, his voice breaking as he asked the boy where he lived. The answer was as crushing as it was simple: nowhere. Silence fell. The park continued its ordinary life around them, but their world had shifted. In that boy's face, they had seen loss, but they had also found a chance to heal, by giving where life had taken, by loving where others turned away. They didn't call it charity. They called it humanity. That day marked not just an act of kindness, but a vow to never again let grief blind them to the suffering of others. As they walked the boy out of the park, hand in hand, the girlfriend turned back for one last glance at the empty bench. Her heart whispered the truth she now understood. We cannot bring back the dead, but we can save the living. And so she wondered, how many more children like him walk past us every day, unseen, unloved, yet carrying the faces of those we've lost?